Alright, well the next little section is going to be talking about expression, and the various bits of the expression that we're going to be talking about is spelling, grammar, punctuation. Now all three of these need to be perfect, and you know what happens if they're not perfect. Okay, what happens if someone's reading your resume and you're applying for a job and there's a spelling error? Well, they know that you are not a good communicator. And what's the number one thing that employers look for? What did we learn from the last video? The number one thing that employers look for is communication. So, spelling, grammar, punctuation must be perfect. Your resume must use clear and direct language, must use appropriate tenses, it must use action verbs where possible, and it must explain unfamiliar acronyms. Let's have a look at some examples of these. So, spelling, grammar, punctuation, perfect. If you are not a native English speaker, you must get someone else to proofread your work. Okay, so go to the UTS Help Centre, okay, and or UTS Careers, and or someone else that you know who is a native English speaker. Okay, it's critical. Turn your spell checker on and set the language to English Australian. Critical. Okay, if you don't turn your spell checker on, it's not going to pick up those blatantly obvious, silly spelling errors, and the author of a document can read it 10 times and not see a spelling error. Someone else can pick it up and see the error in 2 seconds flat. Alright, so some employers hate American spelling, like words like categorize with a Z or a Z, and they'll reject your resume if you use this. So again, if you want to improve your chances of landing an internship, these are the details you have to fix. Okay, so some examples. Let's look at some tenses. Here's Homer again. Homer is saying in 2003 he is breaking up Weasel selling ring. He's using current tense for that one, even though it was in the past. In 2008, secured community support, previous tense. In 2002 and 2010, he's saying will engage patrons in witty, whimsical behaviour. That's future tense. Okay, so there he's inconsistent and he's used the wrong tenses and also inconsistent. So if you're talking about the past, you use the past tense. 2003 worked with Springfield Chief of Police. Okay, worked with Springfield community on organised crime. So use past tense for past employment, use current tense for current employment. Okay, so that's the correct tense. Clear and direct language. Here's an example. Someone's saying from March 2009 to May 2010 they worked at McDonald's in Bondi Junction, and they said employed for 14 months, busy store, irregular shifts, enjoyed it but got too busy. Well, that really doesn't tell us what they were doing at McDonald's, and it doesn't tell us, you know, what do they mean by got too busy? Does that mean that they got too busy, or the store got too busy, or, you know, it's not clear exactly what they're meaning here, and it's not really telling the employer any relevant information about, you know, their previous history. Let's look at how we might improve that. We've said down the bottom here, McDonald's Bondi Junction, serving and preparing food in a fast-paced, demanding environment to a specified standard and method. Now that's clearer and more direct, but my question there would be, is that relevant to getting an internship in engineering? Okay, that's really the question you need to ask. Is it relevant for that purpose? That's what we're talking about in this subject. And the answer to that, of course, is, well, yes, maybe. It may be relevant, but it hasn't been really clearly stated here what the relevance is. Okay, we have to leave it to the reader to decide whether it's relevant or not. And that's not good use of language. So we'll come back to that point later on, but at least it's clearer and more direct. Okay, expression. First point, explain unfamiliar acronyms. Anytime you use an acronym, you have to ask whether someone in your field is going to know what that means. And if the answer's maybe or no, then you need to explain it. Alright, the second thing is you need to use action verbs about things that you've done in previous jobs. What do we mean by that? Okay, based under these headings, use these sorts of verbs because they mean things that you've actually done, okay, as opposed to, prepared food. Right. In what way? So you need to use these action verbs. Relevant evidence, the next item. Now, employer requires evidence that you have the skills and knowledge to do the job. Remember, they're asking the question, can you do the job? And the resume will also help them answer, will you do the job and will you be a good fit? But these are also answered partly by the cover letter, test and interviews. So, what is relevant? Okay, remember I said before, RSA, responsible service of alcohol, not relevant to getting an internship in engineering. So you must decide what is relevant for that field. Okay, and obviously they need to know your major, what area of engineering you are studying in, and therefore that will determine what technical skills are relevant to your area of engineering. Okay, for example, let's say you can program in C or Java. Okay, let's say that's one of your skills. Now that's relevant to ICT engineering, possibly mechatronics engineering, but may not be relevant in civil engineering. Okay, so the area of engineering is critical to work out what's relevant and what's not. So only include information relevant to your major, and the employer is looking for two areas, two things: technical skills and knowledge and what we call transferable skills and knowledge. That is, things that you've learned in one area that can transfer into another area. Okay, these are typically the things that you're going to get from your previous work experience at this level of your education. Now, this slide is an absolutely key slide. It's going to tell you overall what should be in your resume. So, again, this is only a suggestion based on average information from employers, but this is how we're going to mark your resume. So what should be in your resume? These sections should be in there in the following order. Education. Okay, so that should come first. Tell us about your education. Reverse chronological order means that you should tell us about your current UTS engineering course that you are doing, the current course and your major. Okay, then HSC. Okay, and that's probably about it, unless there's some other type of education that you've had that is relevant. Okay, so education first, then employment history, any employment history that you've had. All right, relevant previous work. If not obviously relevant, then you need to state how it's relevant. So do not just state what your roles and responsibilities were, e.g. McDonald's, Kmart, KFC, Officeworks, wherever it is that you've worked in the past. Don't just state, I did this, I did that. You need to analyse your previous work experience and present skills that you have learned that will be relevant to an internship in engineering. So cooking burgers at Macca's, you may have learnt some skills in that role that is relevant to being an intern engineer. Okay, but you're going to have to tell the reader what the skills are and why you think they're relevant. Okay, so that's very important. So don't just say flipped burgers, handled cash, served customers. You need to say, from doing those things, what did I learn and how is that relevant to getting a job as an intern engineer? We'll see some examples of that shortly. Then you should have a skills section, and that should be broken up into two subsections: technical skills and transferable skills. Now, it's pretty important that this skills section must start on page 1, because this is fundamental to you getting a job. They need to know what you can do for their organisation. And if that's not on page 1, then your chances of getting the internship are greatly reduced. So it's an art to squeeze your employment history down, if you've got extensive employment history, down on page 1 to make space for your skills. Okay, and similarly, for the employment history section, for the skills section, it's no good just to state the skills. You need to say how you've achieved, or how you can demonstrate those skills, how you have demonstrated those skills in the past. In other words, they want evidence. Okay, so if you say, for example, in a transferable skill, communication, I am an excellent communicator, that is meaningless unless you can present evidence. So we'll come back to that point later on. You may include hobbies and interests, but again, only if it's relevant. So for example, if you're applying for a job in mechanical engineering and you are tinkering with mechanical things and building mechanical things outside of your work and your studies, okay, it's a hobby or an interest, that is very relevant. Employers love to see that sort of stuff because it demonstrates interest, passion, which by the way is the second most important thing that they're looking for. So absolutely that's critical. That should even be on page 1 if you're doing something like that. Alright, but generally, if it's not really critical, stick it after skills. Referees come next, and then you should include your university subject studied and results in an appendix at the end. So that should be the overall sections. Let's have a look at the details there. The first one is your education, and I reckon about 80% of students in EPP1 typically don't get the name of their course correct. Some employers will reject you outright if you don't even get the name of your course right. So the correct name for most of you, if you're not doing a double degree or some other type of degree, most of you are in C161, Bachelor of Engineering, brackets, insert your major, close brackets, comma, Diploma in Engineering Practice. So Bachelor of Engineering, brackets, civil, or whatever your major is, close brackets, comma, Diploma in Engineering Practice. Okay, now if your major is innovation, you should specify your area of study. And if you're doing a double degree, specify the major of your other degree as well. The second thing is get the name of your institution right. It's University of Technology, comma, Sydney. Again, so many students can't even get that right. If you can't get those right, what does it say about you and your ability to do a job properly? Small things, but these are the things that can make a difference. Employment history. Anything relevant to engineering should be highlighted. Anything not relevant to engineering you should either omit completely or list very briefly, or better still, analyse it and pick out and present aspects that are relevant to engineering. These will generally be your transferable skills. So flipping burgers at McDonald's can be relevant if you analyse it and state the relevance. Here's an example. McDonald's, Bondi Junction, preparing food, handling cash, cleaning, customer service, crew chief. Okay, that is not stating the relevance. The employer must determine the relevance there. They need to know what sort of work you've done at McDonald's, what McDonald's is like as an employer, and whether you've actually possibly gained anything out of that or not. Okay, maybe the employer has kids of their own who work at McDonald's and they're familiar with that. All right. Now, these are maybes. It's not good enough. You really need to state the relevance and provide evidence. So here's another example. McDonald's Bondi Junction developed teamwork skills and communication skills with diverse range of staff and customers, consistently achieved targets, leadership skills developed as the crew chief. Okay, notice these words that I'm putting in bold here: teamwork, communication, achieving targets, leadership. If you go back to the slide I showed you in the last video on what employers look for, the top 10 things, these things are in that list. So you're making it relevant. Notice you're not talking about preparing food, handling cash, cleaning, customer service. You're not using the terms that the industry, the food preparation industry, would use, right? If you're going for a job at KFC, then the top one is correct. But if you're going for an engineering internship job, the top one is garbage. The bottom one is better. Okay? Can you see the difference? This is what we want you to do. Analyse and state relevance. Don't leave it up to the reader to determine the relevance. You state it. Okay, some other points about your resume. Do not include any of the following. Okay, a career objective. A lot of students put a little paragraph on the top, page 1, saying, I am looking for an internship in engineering to enhance my skills and make a contribution to your organisation. Yes, everyone is going to have the same thing. Everyone that applies to these companies looking for an internship wants an internship. Okay, so don't state the bleeding obvious. It's wasting space on page 1. So, there are some exceptions to this. If you are doing a double degree, or you have significant previous work experience, in other words, you've gone out and worked for 3 or 4 or more years before you started university, or you've gone to TAFE, okay, and you've got a degree in another field and you want to change into engineering, then it makes sense to have a career objective or personal statement. Very brief, but to have one there. But if you are doing a single degree and you've come more or less straight from high school, do not include a personal statement or career objective. Okay, again, anything that's not relevant to engineering in your major, do not include. Any skill or trait that you cannot provide evidence for, do not include. E.g., a statement such as, I'm an excellent communicator, meaningless unless you can provide evidence. Okay, the other thing you should not include is references. Do not include a letter. Alright, you should include referees. They are people who can vouch for you. They're called referees, not references. Referees will provide a reference for you when asked by a potential employer. Technical skills. Okay, these will come from subjects you have studied or are currently studying. Again, only relevant ones. They may also come from relevant previous work experience, short courses, certificates, hobbies, volunteer work. But again, you need to state what they are, make it obvious. They will vary according to the major you are studying. You should list computer skills as well, if you have any. Alright, now if you have a lot of technical skills, my advice would be to pick the strongest ones and the ones that you have the most compelling evidence for and present those. Alright, you should have at least 4 technical skills. You want to be an engineer, so you should have some technical skills, at least 4. So look at the subjects you've done, pick out at least 4 technical skills, and if you've got lots of them, I would think maybe 6 would be the maximum. So somewhere around 4 to 6 technical skills should be listed on your resume. Now, remember I said before you should also have a transferable skills section. Okay, if you have a look at previous work done by Andrew Litchfield and others, or Google the word transferable skills, you will find many websites talking about these sorts of things. These are the sorts of things listed on this slide here. Okay, and you should have some of these skills. Possibly a little bit of all of them, but probably not all of them. So pick your best 4 to 6, the ones that you have the strongest evidence for, and put these on your resume. Okay, now I would suggest you should have the first one, communication, on there as a minimum. That should be on there regardless of any others, okay? Because that's obviously the number one thing that employers are looking for. So have a separate section on that with evidence. Okay, now when you're talking about evidence, you should focus on achievement. Okay, so employers really want to know whether you can apply skills and knowledge to achieve something. So where possible, focus on achievements in your resume and use numbers to quantify achievements if possible. And even better still, compare your achievement to the average or the norm. Okay, if you're going for a job at Google, that's the minimum they require. Now, some people can't focus on achievement, and that's fine, but you will definitely make your resume more competitive if you can. Alright, so let's have a look at some examples. Here's an example of good old Homer, and let's have a look at his skill profile. And you can see in his skill profile he's got beer drinker. I drink lots of beer, Duff beer, at Moe's Tavern and Bar, pretty much every night of the week. And donut waste processor, consumed damaged stock whilst working as a quality and quantity control officer. So he's listing beer drinker and donut waste processor as skills, but he doesn't say anything about what he's achieved as those skills. Okay, so we don't actually know, whether he was any good at those skills. So if you have skills on your resume, or roles on your resume, so prepared food, handled cash, dealt with customers, that really is meaningless because it doesn't say what did you achieve in that role. So let's have a look at another example of how you can change that. Slight change. Okay, skill profile. This time we've got beer profit increaser. Not just beer drinker, but beer profit increaser. And the point there is increased profits of Duff beer by 500% by participating in beverage consumption at Moe's. Well, now we know that Homer Simpson is a champion beer drinker. Okay, and that he's done that to increase the profits of Duff beer, and he's done that 500%. Wow, that's massive. So we really know something about Homer now that we didn't know before. And donut waste processor, he saved Donut King over $500 per week on skip costs by eating damaged donuts. So he's made a massive achievement here for Donut King, saving them $500 a week okay, on rubbish bin costs by consuming these donuts. So again, that's a big achievement, and it's quantified, telling us a lot more information than just saying consumed damage stock. Okay, it's quantifying it. This is what employers want to see. Okay, so not achievement focused, drink lots of beer, handle cash, flip burgers, etc. Achievement focused, actually achieve something. And achievement focused with comparison, even better, is increased profits of Duff Beer by 500% at Moe's, elevating this tavern to the most profitable outlet for Duff in the whole of Springfield. So it's exceptional achievement. Okay, if you achieve something and it's the norm, increased profits of Duff Beer by 500%, and by the way, all other taverns in Springfield also achieved a 500% increase in Duff Beer around the same time, well then, then it's not a great achievement, is it? So you really need to say what you achieved and how that compares to the norm. So that's what employers like to see. Alright, so that brings us really to the end of what needs to be in your resume, and Careers Service at UTS have put together this resume checklist, which is looking at all of the items that we've talked about so far. And we'll be using this in the tutorial. So, favourable first impression, okay, overall length, layout, no gimmicks, footers, font, highlighting, headings, and so on and so on. Alright, so these are all the things we're going to be looking for. And moving on, language and relevant info. Okay, so these are a checklist of all those things that we've talked about, and we're going to be going through each of those in the tutorial on your resume to see whether you have taken the care and time to produce a resume which is competitive relative to your peers. Now, the other thing is, of course, we've talked about this before, is tailoring your resume. And you need to tailor your resume for each job that you apply for. And what do we mean by tailoring? That means that we choose to omit or include information that is appropriate for the role we're applying for. So we have to address the criteria that the job is asking for. So that means that you cannot have one resume that you use to apply for all jobs. You should have a separate resume for each job that you apply for. Yes, that means more work, but if you don't do this, your chances of getting to stage 2 in the employment process is greatly reduced. So choose to omit or include information that's appropriate for the role. Foregrounding highly relevant information for that role. That means moving it onto page 1, bolding it, elaborating with more detail, and backgrounding less relevant information. Move it away from page 1, provide less detail. Now, this is a little bit tricky sometimes because it may mean moving a whole section or splitting sections up to highlight information on page 1 and move less relevant information through onto page 2. So, not easy, bit of an art to it, but needs to be done. Let's look at some examples. Here's Homer's standard resume on the left. Okay, we can see he has done school certificate and certificate 3 in nuclear power plant safety operations. He's worked at Springfield Nuclear Power Plant as a safety inspector. He's worked at Moe's Bar and Tavern as a casual and relieving bartender. And he's also worked as a donut tester at Donut King. Now, let's assume that Homer is going for a job as a document controller at Krispy Kreme Donuts. Okay, so we want to see something to do with documents and donuts, the 2 Ds. So the resume on the left here, not really very tailored because it's talking about nuclear stuff. Okay, nuclear stuff, not relevant to Krispy Kreme. And yeah, there's some stuff in there about donuts, okay, but that's got to be highlighted. And there's stuff about documentation, that's also critical. So Homer's had a go at tailoring his resume. He's done it. He's improved things, but look, they're still not great. So let's compare the difference. On the left, Certificate 3 in Nuclear Power Plant Safety Operations, award for trying really, really hard some of the time. On the right, Certificate 3 Nuclear Power Plant Safety Operations, solid academic results in Documentation 1 and Documentation 2. Okay, so he's trying to highlight things that are relevant to documents. So on the left, regular inspections of nuclear power plant, documentation, Springfield Nuclear Power Plant. On the right, same job, safety inspector, responsible for safety documentation for over 2 decades for certain plant sectors, familiarity with various types of documents, methods and statutory requirements. Casual and relieving bartender, serving drinks, handling cash, responsible for closing premises. On the left. On the right, involved in all aspects of the business, including assistance with bookkeeping, documentation. Donut tester, donut king, involved in quality and quantity control and other roles, made contributions to documentation such as waste bin cost savings reports. So it's highlighting relevant things, okay, and notice under the skill profile he's moved up donuts to the number 1 position, okay, and then if you look further at the projects, he's talking there about donuts as well. So highlighting anything to do with documents or donuts, okay, and then he's also going for another job at the same time, but this time it's in the marketing department at Duff Beer. Now we know that he drinks a lot of beer and he likes Duff Beer, but does he have any previous experience with marketing? How can we tailor a resume where we're changing roles from becoming a safety inspector to marketing department? Well, in this case, we've got a career objective there. Okay, so Homer said, I'm a creative, results-driven, consistent and reliable person seeking to combine my passion for brewed beverages and highly developed communication skills to make a significant contribution in the beverage industry in a manner that is sensitive to the local community. So, look, I'm not going to make any judgments about the quality of that career objective, okay, but at least he's included one because he's changing roles. Okay, so he's tailoring the resume. So if you have worked as a chef for the last 6 years and now you want to become a biomedical engineer, it's probably a good idea to say something about why you want to do that, where you want to go with your life. Okay, so again, tailoring resume on the left, safety inspector. What's he got here? Consistency and reliable. Communications. Okay, and then we've got Moe's Bar and Tavern. Serve drinks, handling cash, closing premises on the left. On the right, developed extensive knowledge of beverages, particularly beer. Regular engagement with clients to understand beverage trends and pull factors. Okay, and then at the top of the skills, small business marketing. Previous successful role as Chief Marketing Officer of Mr. Plow's snowplow business, because he's going for a role in the marketing department. And then beer profit increaser. Okay, projects, top of the list, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Driver of Mr. Plow's snow ploughing business. Okay, with evidence of outcomes there. So the resume on the right here is very different to the resume that we had for the document controller at Krispy Kreme Donuts. This is the sort of tailoring you guys need to do on your standard resume, you'll have a standard resume and you'll tailor that for every job you apply for. Okay, you must. If you don't, your chances of getting an internship are greatly reduced. Tailoring will greatly enhance your chances of landing an internship. Referees, you should include 2 to 3 relevant and current referees. You should include their name, their position, the company that they work for, and their phone number. Okay, and their relationship to you if they are a family member or even if they have the same surname. Okay, and you must ask their permission, and do not say references available on request. Okay, I suggest that you should provide the references. 12 to 18 months is current. I would suggest high school referees are ancient history at this stage of your course. They should be referees that are from your current and most recent casual or part-time positions. Some final tips. Don't overclaim things. Don't say things like, I have extensive previous work experience when you've only just left high school. Keep it simple and to the point. Sometimes less is more. Better to focus on quality, not quantity. Be honest, never lie. Don't say that you've done things that you haven't. Okay. Crafting a good resume is an art that takes a lot of time. So be meticulous and methodical. And at this stage of your course, 2 to 3 pages max. Okay. So a summary of what we've talked about. The resume is used to shortlist candidates. Your chances of making it through the first stage is very small. So it's really critical that your resume is perfect. The employer will only spend 5 to 7 seconds looking at page 1, and more than half, up to 90% of resumes are rejected in the first 5 to 7 seconds. So it must be visually appealing, it must be laid out logically, must have perfect spelling, grammar and punctuation and appropriate language, and must present relevant information that addresses the specific criteria for the job you're applying for. So it's not easy at all to write a good resume. Okay, and as I said, you could get 12 out of 20 for your resume in this subject, and you will have great trouble finding an internship. And some students do. Some students take 4 or more semesters to find their first internship. So you don't want to be in that boat. Some students find an internship before they have even finished EPP 1. Okay, those students are not necessarily the ones that have high distinctions on their transcript. Remember, academic results are number 5 on the list. And a lot of employers actually say that they don't hire people who have high distinctions for everything. Why is that? Because they do not want to hire Sheldon Cooper. Okay, they don't want to hire someone who's a genius but can't work with people. So they're looking for rounded individuals who have skills and attributes across the board and have evidence of that. So resume, first step, and everything else is irrelevant if you don't make it past the first step. So very important to spend time and get that right. And we take this very seriously in this subject. A big chunk of the marks in this subject are taken up by various versions of your resume. So we expect you to spend a lot of time and get it right. We want your resume to be in that dark grey section. Very competitive. Okay, that's it for now. The next video will be talking about the next step in the process, which is cover letters.